We've always defined ourselves by the ability to overcome the impossible.
So I went into Interstellar not knowing what to expect, and I came out thinking that I probably hadn't had a cinema experience ever that had left me so conflicted. I knew that I liked the film, but to what degree I was really unsure. The good aspects definitely outweighed the bad, but I couldn't shrug off those moments in the film that I outright hated. The thing about Interstellar is that there is so much to talk about that it's difficult to cover everything. But after seeing the film for a second time and gathering my thoughts, I now know what I make of it. Let's start with the plot.
What are you going to do with it?
I'm gonna give it something socially responsible to do.
Humanity is on the precipice of being completely extinct due to our natural resources depleting over the years. However, upon the discovery of a wormhole, a group of astronauts led by Matthew McConaughey, aka Cooper, are launched on an interstellar voyage to find a new home for our species. Now, I'll preface this by saying that anything that deals with the universe, I will more than likely have an interest in, and the main facet of Interstellar are its cosmic portions. It's a subject which I have a passion for, and it's clear that Christopher Nolan and his team gave great attention to detail regarding the science of what they were dealing with. What makes this even more impressive is that the science of the movie is in fact intertwined with the main plot. In order to tell this story, a lot of research would have been required, and this is evident throughout the movie. Some films would have skimmed past on the more realistic components just to make it easier to comprehend, but it's nice to see a film not sacrificing its intelligence to tell its story. The movie is very creative on how it deals with time and space, and these are the moments of the film where I thought, this really is quite spectacular.
We see our space-time will have flattened.
I felt that as a whole, the story was very creative, and the heart of the film does reflect our species' current standing in the universe. It's delivered quite intelligently. It's so high concept, and when the focus is on outer space, it does it in such a daring way that you don't really see in mainstream blockbusters. I've heard a criticism of the film was that it didn't know what tone to take in terms of whether it wanted to be hyper-realistic or just a piece of entertainment. I'll expand more on this later, but for the most part, I don't understand why it can't be both. I mean, in terms of the verisimilitude towards the science of what they were dealing with, it can't be topped, and as for the less realistic moments, the guy was making a movie, not a documentary. I mean, that's the point, the genre is science fiction. I don't see what's so different between the more artistic elements of Interstellar's ending in comparison with 2001's ending. The film's concept is pretty fantastic, and I really enjoyed how the backstory of Earth wasn't directly referenced in order to teach the audience the current situation of our characters. The backstory of Earth is crucial to understanding why these people have to explore other galaxies, and instead of telling us everything that happened beforehand, like say a lesser blockbuster film would, it shows us how daily life has been affected through these circumstances. It's a little thing, I know, but I've seen it done far worse before. Plus, the film overall does a good job of showing, not telling. Considering how much the plot relies on science to tell its story, it's refreshing to see a film that isn't overwhelmed with expository dialogue. It actually has trust that the viewer has the ability of inference. I mean, if you don't understand relativity, event horizons, or Schwarzschild radius, then you just have to decipher it for yourself. Although there was a moment that stood out that was definitely to appease the audience and was not just a dialogue between characters. I've used the folding paper method to explain to someone how a wormhole works before, but you need to use that to a NASA-trained pilot to explain how a wormhole works on the way to a wormhole. Okay then. And trust me, I'll get to the characters soon. Interstellar places a large emphasis on spectacle, and it's wonderful to see the varied way in which the crew created this world. Christopher Nolan's a director that I admire, even if it is for the sheer fact that when he requires an effect, if it can be done practically, he'll go for that. It's really impressive to see a crew still take the effort to create an effect that would be much more difficult and time-consuming when most filmmakers today would just choose CGI over realism. And it doesn't end there. Obviously, just because of the setting, CGI is required. But even then, it's really something to behold. A special mention needs to go out to the special effects crew and the team at Double Negative, who collaborated with theoretical physicist Kip Thorne to develop the special effects for this film. When you need to develop new CGI software just so that you can tell your story as close to reality as possible, I'll applaud that. There are moments of presentation where the film manages to infuse the awe-inspiring with moments of serenity in just a few shots that really amazed me. The film was, as is now typical of Nolan, shot on IMAX, and to date it's the most IMAX footage to be used in a film. The cinematography is gorgeous, and it helped that as a director, Nolan positions the camera to make the viewer a participant as opposed to a voyeur. However, my one gripe with the film's imagery is that it didn't utilise it as best as it could. I felt that the film should have taken the time to allow everything to slow down during the journey through space and allowed the audience to take everything in. Some of the most astounding images in the entire movie I felt as though I didn't appreciate fully because the film didn't allow them to linger perhaps as long as they could have. The sound design really added to the atmosphere too. Okay, sure, all they had to do was mute everything, but it still worked really well. The score had some good points, although at moments it seemed more melodramatic than it needed to be. But it's Hans Zimmer doing what Hans Zimmer does. Is it his best score? No. But it's still better than most.
We're going to write several technical papers about this. One aimed at the astrophysics community, and then something for the computer graphics community, saying, here are some things that we've discovered about gravitational lensing by rapidly spinning black holes that we never knew before.
So, no matter how you look at this film from a technical standpoint, it's sensational. The space segments really are spectacularly done, and visually, there just aren't many films that can even compare to it. And then there's the other side to the film. See, Interstellar has often been cited as Nolan's 2001: A Space Odyssey, and this comparison is not too far from the truth. I mean, even the film is aware of its influences and similarities and makes note to pay homage to it. The robot Taz seems to be a direct tribute to the monolith from 2001, and I'm fairly certain that the score even sampled Thus Spoke Zarathustra at points. Both films deal with humanity's place in the grand scheme of the universe. However, Interstellar focuses much more on the human element than 2001, and it does so to its detriment. Interstellar is still very much a blockbuster film, and so to tell its story, it incorporates very conventional storytelling methods. For one, it has a leading man. Thankfully, Matthew McConaughey does deliver a good performance as Cooper, and his character is quite well developed. I'll give the film credit too. There was a scene where Cooper is watching footage from aboard his ship that I thought was very emotional. Yet the film rarely has moments like this. For example, the chemistry between Cooper and his daughter Murph seems very realistic, but the performance of Murph was pretty bad. For those who don't know, the film takes place over the course of many years, so Murph is played by both a child actor as well as an adult, and they are both played badly. The child actor is just bad at conveyance. I did not believe one word coming out of her mouth. But the older actor was a bad performance working with bad material. I don't think anyone could make running into a room and shouting Eureka before kissing a stranger look good. Also, I felt as though the film should have spent more time on the relationship between Cooper and his son. It's a subplot which just seems to be forgotten, and given how the movie progresses, it probably would have been the more interesting focal point. There was also a character that appears in the film, and as soon as I saw them I thought, yep, they are very disposable. And wouldn't you know, I was right. Now, I'm going to begin to mention the things that I really disliked about this film. However, unfortunately, they are integral to the main narrative, and so I'm issuing a major spoiler warning. If you want to listen, be my guest, but click here if you want to skip it. I'll give you a chance to click. 3, 2, 1, let's go! So, it's about the halfway point in the film that the pace of the movie slows down after the crew reach the second planet. The crew find Matt Damon stationed there, and boy is this some backwards-ass character.
Matt Damon!
This guy is a Bond villain on a power trip. His motivation makes no sense and his judgment goes all over the place. See, it turns out that he's betraying the main crew, so he explains his diabolical plan to Matthew McConaughey for no reason, which to be honest makes no sense, so he decides that he should probably murder Matthew McConaughey and fails. Yup. Then this fucking mustache twirler goes apeshit and forgets all his space training. Why would a trained astronaut not board his craft properly before opening the space lock? And it's so annoying because around 30 minutes of the film is spent on this segment. For a long time it honestly just feels like a cheesy sci-fi flick. It really slows the tempo down and it's no way near as interesting as other parts that we've previously seen. This was an issue that I had a few times with the film. When it should have taken things slower, it wanted to rush them, and when it should have picked things up, it slowed down. Now, I'm aware that Christopher Nolan hasn't always been the greatest with his dialogue. He's good at writing relevant things that move the plot along, but when it comes to characters expressing feelings, sometimes it's the equivalent of a ZX Spectrum explaining ennui. But this time there were moments when I was cringing in my seat. When Anne Hathaway said the line, "Love is the only thing that can transcend space-time," I don't think my toes could have curled anymore. Yes, it's as bad as it sounds, and it's at this point that you realise, holy shit, love is going to be the key to the universe, isn't it? Yet what's even worse is when she says it, it's so obvious that they're going to reincorporate it later in the film. They make such an effort to shove down your throat this theme of love, which was so unnecessary because it didn't add anything. I genuinely liked the concept of the ending. I think it was a good way to link the plot together, but pushing love as its key element was not needed in order to make the ending work. It was these moments that made you remember that Interstellar is a blockbuster film, and as a result, there are scenes and devices solely for the typical viewer. For example, there's a scene towards the end once Matthew McConaughey leaves the black hole, when we see two lights in the distance. I have the feeling that they initially wanted to end the movie there, but it would have been too ambiguous for the average person. So instead, we have a 10-minute epilogue explaining everything that happened, and it just feels out of place. I mean, it's not like Nolan hasn't done an ambiguous ending before, so why not now? There was also just too many plot conveniences to look past. For instance, Murph just happens to burn down her brother's livelihood, and then all is forgiven because she tells him that her dad is a ghost and is teaching them the secrets of the universe through telekinetic Morse code. Moments that were there just to please the majority was so infuriating because it took away from the film's unconventional take on the modern sci-fi genre. There was a moment to me that summed up the film perfectly. During the climax of the movie, it was intercutting from space to Earth, showing what was arguably the most integral parts of each storyline. Yet when it went back to Earth, I found myself disinterested. These are the two different sides of Interstellar on opposite ends of the spectrum. Its artistic side and its emotional side. At the beginning of the movie, I thought that it was handling its personal drama very well, but at some point it loses its way. It tries to juggle the emotional with the inventive, yet both are so removed from a middle ground, it's a task which doesn't fully work. So after all of this, I mustn't like Interstellar. Actually, it's kind of great. It took me a while to decide what rating I was going to give this film, and films that I would give this rating to normally don't have anywhere near as many flaws as this, but at the same time they also don't reach the heights of moments that this film did. Say what you want about Nolan, but the guy implements intrepid ideas that most filmmakers wouldn't want to take on. Is the film overrated? Absolutely. Guys, this is not in the top 20 films of all time. It's probably not even in the top 100. But is it overhated? Yeah. After seeing the film for a second time, the elements that irked me annoyed me less so because I was finally able to comprehend the bigger picture of what the filmmaker was aiming for. The technical skill required to make this project was astounding, and overall the film does work, and I think it works well. If the dramatic aspects were just a bit tighter, most of these problems could have been avoided, and it could have been a masterpiece. A good analogy for Interstellar is that it's the destiny of films. It's a sci-fi epic with glaring flaws that I don't think I'll ever be able to look past, but at its core, it's mechanically brilliant, and I can't say that I'm not enjoying myself with it. I really disliked some parts, but the parts I liked, I loved. Interstellar gets an 8 out of 10.